Before I request Sri Shakti Sinha ji to deliver his lecture, I would like Dr. Monish Tongwang, the coordinator for this lecture, to formally introduce Sri Shakti Sinha ji. Thank you. And over to Dr. Monish Tongwang.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, and a very good afternoon to Sri Shakti Sinha ji. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it is a privilege for me to be given the opportunity to introduce you, sir. It will be very difficult to introduce your illustrious career, but I will try my best to do so in a nutshell. Sri Shakti Sinha is the honorary director of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Policy Research and International Studies at the MS University of Vadodara, and it's an honorary director of the Delhi School of Public Policy and Governance, established as an Institute of Excellence by the Delhi University. Earlier, he was a director of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, New Delhi, a national institution. He is also a distinguished fellow at the India Foundation, New Delhi, and is also a distinguished fellow at the Institute of National Security Studies in Sri Lanka. He has a master's in public policy from George Mason University, USA, and a master's in history from University of Delhi. He was a member of the Indian Administrative Service from 1979 to 2013. He has held positions at different levels at the union, provincial, and local levels. Internationally, he headed the United Nations Governance and Development Team in Afghanistan during the period 2006 to 9, coordinating the donor support to the Afghan government, and was earlier senior advisor to India's executive director on the World Bank board during the period 2000 to 2004, representing Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Sri Lanka. Sri Sinha has worked at think tanks in India, like in the position of director, India Foundation, visiting senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, New Delhi, and at Singapore as a research fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies. He is the author of a forthcoming book on Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee's prime ministership, which would be released later this year. He has edited 8 books, the most recent one being an authoritative account of different facets of India-China relations, aptly titled One Mountain, Two Tigers, India, China, and the High Himalayas. He has written many books, chapters, working papers, policy briefs, columns on political economy of India, Indian foreign policy and strategic affairs, governance, and on Afghanistan for both global and Indian publications. It's an honor and privilege to have you here, sir, in our platform, and we are all willing and eagerly waiting to listen to your insights. And without further ado, I welcome you, sir, to the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations at MAHE. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Arvind. First, let me apologize. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, we do hear you.
Good.
Please go ahead.
Yes,
First,
sir.
my apologies for joining late, but I was having technical problems. My Microsoft team was taking me to India Foundation again and again. So that's why this delay. Sorry for that. But it's a privilege to be talking to all of you. And let's hope that we all, yes. So let me start by saying that even as we talk today, Dr. Jaishankar, our foreign minister, would have met Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, at lunch hosted by the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. Yesterday, the Indian foreign secretary, Ashwada Shringla, had a trilateral on the Indo-Pacific with his French and Australian counterparts, discussing maritime security cooperation. There's been an announcement from Australia that the Quad will meet soon at the FM level. Both Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and Dr. Jaishankar have met the Iranian counterparts in the last 1 week. Rajnath Singh also met the Chinese Defense Minister at Moscow at their invitation, the Chinese request. The Russians are expediting the delivery of the SS-400 missile system to India, leaving the Chinese doubly unhappy as their delivery is delayed. And the Saudi Crown Prince, who had effectively bankrolled Pakistan for so long, is effectively the de facto ruler, has snubbed Pakistan quite publicly. These are strange times, but also an indication of how far India's power trajectory has risen. If you look, I'm just going to take you back in history a little bit, not about India, But why I think analyzing and assessing foreign policy is a very tricky business. 1991, the first Gulf War had taken place. Switzerland had refused to allow its airspace to be used for any war-related overflights. Did this represent a continuation of the Swiss policy of neutrality, which is a core principle of their federal system structure? But on the other hand, Switzerland, though not a member of the United Nations, agreed to implement UNSC resolution number 661, the sanctions on Iraq after the invasion of Kuwait. And therefore, can we say that the Swiss remained stuck to the old policy, or that they made a shift? I mean, the key point I'm trying to make here is we must ask the right questions. The second thing to be kept in mind always is this old paradigm, old axiom in foreign policy, that there's continuity and there's change. Change is associated with, and therefore you must see it in perspective. Foreign policy has to respond to changed circumstances, a new forceful leadership, as we see in India, the changing external climate, national perspectives, etc. But dramatically changing course other than emergency like a war is never easy. So I'm keeping these two principles in mind when I talk to you and trying to raise the right questions to get the answers. And in that context, I'll try and explain India's rising power trajectory. Our shifting poles of global power is visible to everybody. It's a perception because, you can't really measure things. Perception is there that there is a shift, and the shift is on for some time. It's not an overnight process, though it has gathered momentum over the last decade quite rapidly. What are those 5 or 6 different things that we should look at? One is America's decline, a decline which to me is grossly overstated because it is a relative decline, not an absolute decline. Just to bring things in perspective, the American GDP per capita, or what we say popularly per capita income, is 5 times China's per capita income. Look at American defense expenditure, innovations, etc. To think of America as declining is, I think, as I said, no exaggeration. But America has an ambivalent attitude to the world. On the one hand, you have the unilateral hegemon or liberal interventionist, exaggerated after 1991. And the other, which is almost parallel to it, is America as a reluctant globalizer. Again, going back to the 1992 elections, Bush Sr. had won the Gulf War, and yet he lost the election. But in the campaign, he was portrayed as a globalizer. He was signing NAFTA with Mexico. All our jobs will go away. America must shut its walls. Ross Perot attacked him. Clinton was somewhere in between, but did attack globalization. So it's not just Bush. It's not just Trump, but it's going back a long way. And in fact, even Obama's election, if you go back in 2008, was about America. George Bush came to power Jr. in 2000, saying that America is a humble player, again concentrating on the domestic economy. And there's a broad continuum between this interventionist and withdrawal. China's rise, post-2001 WTO accession, open to all. I don't have to go into details. Russia's decline, despite Putin's very aggressive approach, economically, politically, and whichever way you see. India's rise, slower than China's, much slower. But now we can see over the last 5-6 years, much greater engagement with the world. We have changed our attitudes in looking at the world. We are far more confident, far more flexible. Our behaviors have changed. And we are generally seen, other than a few people, as part of the solution of the world, not part of the problem. The fifth point is the quagmire that you see in the European Union. And this predates Brexit. Let's not blame Brexit for it. Though now there are indications that it is cognizant of the changing world. The recent EU summit with China was an indication of that. And the next point, the last point on this, what's happening in the world, is ASEAN's inability to emerge as the independent political pole. Due to the enmeshed nature of its economic ties with China and political ties with China, and that a few of ASEAN countries are so now dependent on China that they have become part of the Chinese sphere of influence, preventing ASEAN from taking up a common position. So these are the things happening around the world, which I thought we must, broad things. How has India been? Okay. Over the past decade, and particularly so in the last 5-6 years, certain countries have emerged as key countries for us. Now, key need not only mean positive, key can be a big negative also, but they're very important. One, of course, is USA. I don't think we can argue on that. Second is China. And the third would be Japan. Earlier, Pakistan was very high, but now, fortunately, Pakistan is going down and Japan is there. Then a whole host of countries at the second level: France, Singapore, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Australia, Indonesia, and broadly ASEAN, EU, but there seems to be reluctance on both sides. Where do we place Russia and UK? Russia, on one hand, relations have been moving away. They're strong in defense, but Russia's complicated relationship with the USA, its relationship with China, and the fact that economically Russia really is not an important player has changed things. UK is too distracted domestically to really be of any meaningful relationship. I wish we had better with Germany on both sides, but then German focus on China is so strong that is not going to be easy. But as I said, India, why is India seen as part of the solution and not part of the problem? And I'll try and go back to a speech given by then US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, this is October 2017, where he talked about the rise of China and India. Chinese rise, as I said, is far more impressive, absolutely. But the fact that the Chinese aggression was now coming up, and China's rise was seen as trying to violate the international rules of the game, rules that enabled China's rise in the first place. So therefore, when it comes to WTO, it didn't live up to its commitments. On the law of the seas, we saw what's happening. We saw aggression against Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and something we didn't notice much in India or the world. 2016, His Holiness Dalai Lama visited Mongolia for the 7th time. It's not his first visit, 7th visit. China took umbrage to it, blocked down Mongolia completely. It's a landlocked country, dependent on exports of minerals, Rio Tinto, etc. Blocked it completely till literally Mongolia had to surrender. People complain about blockade of Nepal, it's a Sunday picnic compared to this. On the other hand, Tillerson praised the role of India as a responsible country. An example, not that we don't have border disputes, we had one with Bangladesh, maritime dispute, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar. It went to the same tribunal under the International Law of the Seas. The tribunal's judgment in June 2014 effectively gave 70% of the disputed area to Bangladesh. What was India's reaction to it? We accepted the tribunal award in total. We didn't question it. No controversy, no public statement, nothing. We saw ourselves and see ourselves as a country which functions within the rules. Because you don't follow rules, you're tempted not to follow rules, I agree. If you don't follow rules, it will be a case of Matsya Nyaya, which Chanakya warned us against. And that is the last thing we should look at. On the other hand, in 2013 at Hanoi, at the ASEAN meet, Yang Yechi, the then Chinese state councillor, and now even high director of the office in the Chinese Communist Party, told ASEAN members, please accept that China is a big country and you are small. And that is it, he said. Can you imagine an Indian Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, anybody saying this to partner countries that you are big, I'm big and you are small? Because, we see as emergence as contingent on following the rules. Now, are the rules fair? No. The rules are unduly biased in favor of the winners of Second World War. Fine, we agree to that. And therefore, China and India did not get their place in the sun. China much less so, India far more so. Fair criticism. But in order to avoid falling into something which Graham Allison has brought out very clearly, which is daddy's trap, the only way forward is through negotiations between stakeholders. If necessary, create new platforms. We've seen Quad coming up, Quad Plus being thought of, the International Solar Alliance, BRICS, RCEP, etc. And you demonstrate yourself to be valid, to be a relevant partner by being strong economically. If a country's economy is strong and it's seen as contributing to global growth, if not a driver of global growth, then other listens to you much more. There's only so much that my army or navy can do to a country, say 5,000 miles away, as my economy can do. And therefore, India's economic growth, India's hands-on engagement with the world, India's voice started being heard far more than ever before. And we moved, not that we are stuck to our positions. At Paris climate change talks, I mean, if there was somebody who played a constructive role, it was Prime Minister Modi. Very responsible. He dropped our insistence of historic responsibilities. You West, you have burned the world, you have caused pollution. Now let me pollute till I reach your level. That was our stand. It has justice to it, but short-term justice. Long-term, it's one world, we are all living on it. Prime Minister Modi went beyond and said, fine, though our per capita emissions are very low, we are a large country, therefore we shall cap it up at a much lower level than what you people are doing. I think that was heroic, it was very, very responsible, and therefore you're taken much more seriously. Now all these changes happening in the world, we live in a rough neighborhood. I don't have to elaborate for you. The weight of the global economy is shifting. So it's an uncertain kind of a world. The global, as people think it is shifting towards the Indo-Pacific, has shifted, etc. Now, as I said, looking at per capita income, we are far away, very, very far away. Even China, though it contributes a lot to global growth, on the per capita income, as I said, is still far beyond the country. We are comparatively much smaller, let's be very clear, let's not jump ahead, but we have been growing in importance every year. Yes, there has been slowdown in the recent past, major structural changes that are happening in the economy, which is slowing it down. I'm ignoring the COVID aspects too early. I don't want to jump the gun and find myself completely wrong. Now, in this shift which has happened to the Indo-Pacific, what has complicated India's position tremendously is the changes in the China's profile, economically and strategically. Xi Jinping has given up on Deng Xiaoping's famous 16 characters of hiding your capabilities, biding your time, and not taking leadership. Chinese Communist Party has changed its rules to allow literally for a one-person rule, give up the collective rule, give up the principle of 2 terms only, give up the principle, therefore, of a transition every 8 years. Every 10, they've got 10 years, they've got out of that. And projection of power words also. In his speech, marathon 3.5-hour speech, rivaling Fidel Castro at the 19th Congress in Beijing in October 2017, Xi Jinping made it clear by 2050, we shall be a country, a nation with pioneering global influence. China words are very important. Pioneering means numero uno. I shall be number 1 in the world. This is obviously a serious challenge to India, to Japan, to ASEAN, to our neighbors. And China's ability and willingness to meddle in the internal affairs of countries, including our neighbors, but not just our neighbors. Look at Australia, look at everywhere else. It's a lot. Therefore, this complicates things to it. China's ability to throw cash, very dodgy investments, very tilted against the recipients, but that's a long-term problem. And therefore, India will doubtlessly feel constrained. Despite these constraints, which is all around India, you must give credit to this government that has accepted these understood these constraints, not accepted it, understood these constraints, and then demonstrated flexibility and farsightedness, but without becoming a belligerent power. So you're able to be flexible, you're able to stand firm, but you don't want to pick a fight. Now there's unprecedented situation in Ladakh. I don't have to mention it. As Harshvardhan Shingla said, is the worst in India-China relationship since 1962. And yet you see India acting with a tremendous amount of restraint, political restraint. So there's a robust military defense, but tremendous amount of maturity politically. We are clear, status quo must be restored. Let's see how it is done, but that is the bottom line. To go back 3 years to Doklam, again we stood firm, saying substantial negotiations on the merits of the case only after you withdraw and restore status quo, and that is what happened. The point is that in circumstances like this, a country has to stand firm and be confident. Don't get provoked. A lot of people saying that, oh, you should act more belligerently. And acting restraint is cowardice. People say that. I say it is not cowardice. Absolutely not cowardice. Being foolishly adventuresome cannot be an act of bravery. It's foolish. A country, as much as an individual, must be taken seriously. And that means that your words and your actions are in match. If there's a dysfunction between the two, there's disjoint between the two, you're not taken seriously, you're brushed aside, and even when you're serious, people don't understand you, which is the worst thing that happened. I think India has behaved itself in these trying times very, very maturely. But let us also understand, and this is where we still need to persuade people, no country can exist in isolation. It cannot sort out all the problems of its own. Hence, while many analysts say that India has effectively entered strategic alliance, this would not be correct. India does not enter into alliances, but what it does is have strategic partnerships or platforms of cooperation with a whole host of actors. India, Japan, and USA carry out the Malabar exercises, which is in the field of maritime operations. There are other platforms of collaboration on specific issues also, where countries can be co-opted. The point is that each country wants to retain your sovereignty. We are very careful of that. There's no question of surrender to it, to a military alliance. But yet, one has to learn how to work within this. India's hesitation in involving Australia in the Malabar exercises points to still cautionary streak, I'm not saying caution is wrong, that runs deep in our policymakers. But with Galwan, Pangong So, and Depsang people ignore, they concentrate on Galwan and Pangong So. Depsang to me is more serious. I think we will soon have to drop this ambiguity. Now, these joint or collaborative exercises like Malabar, why are they important? Because they serve a strategic purpose. The outgoing Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, when he came to Delhi in 2007 and at Parliament spoke about the conference of the two seas, in effect, he was calling for a free and open Indo-Pacific. This example of experience of Malabar would be very useful if our partners have to work together on, say, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations, or at different levels of interoperability. So that's a strategic aspect of it in terms of military. But Abe has again talked about connectivity and about the Asia-Africa growth corridor. That money is simply not available for countries who need it to rise, invest in infrastructure, create social infrastructure. And these countries, the Americans have also spoken about it, have to work together to try and meet some of the very humongous requirements of developing countries for investments. The Chinese money looks very attractive, but very heavy terms. Haman-Tota is an example of this. Pakistan's renegotiation of the Bhasa Dam, Pakistan putting 3 projects in the Tharpaka region on hold, shows that things are not as hunky-dory with Chinese money. I have to see it like this. But yes, the amounts are large and countries do have difficulty in working. So our 3 countries must take the lead in this, must go beyond talking about it and accepting that these host countries have sovereign equal, but following the norms, go ahead and do responsible lending with low-cost money so that you have environmentally and financially sustainable projects coming up that work in their interest. You know, our recent agreement, we accepted Maldives' request for this massive project, I think 500 million or something, to link the capital Mali with other 2 islands. We have to step up, if necessary, by using platforms of cooperation with USA and Japan that I just talked about. I mean, we must understand in all this that India's rise is going to be incremental. And also it is not automatic. A lot of times we assume, yes, we will grow. No, it's not so easy. It's also not easy because domestically, Indian politics is, to put it politely, very participative, with lots and lots of dialogue, lots and lots of disagreements, roadblocks, and therefore one must be prepared to understand that in a democratic polity, things move differently. But it has emerged, as I said again, is a serious player which is willing to engage with others, which does not look at size alone. Our partnership with the South Pacific nations, which was started only by Prime Minister Modi, is something we must also look at. Of course, in an economy, size matters, But size alone cannot dictate nation-to-nation relations. One advantage India has is that we normally don't let the ghost of the past bog us down. Our today's relationship with America, popularity of America, despite it being a decades-long ally of Pakistan, is a case in point. Or specifically, personally, look at the way Prime Minister Modi was treated by the United States, denial of visa for such a long time. And yet as Prime Minister, he completely shut that out because now he's Prime Minister of India engaging with the United States, two sovereigns. You cannot let personal factors come in the way because India is more important. Our leadership in position today, they are realist, they have national goals, which I mentioned. But they're sensitive to their autonomy. And yet, and this is where I disagree with Mr. Shaiva there, that we do not let our realism sink into effectively cynicism. In fact, it is the optimism because we are driven by hope. We are driven by a better future, the vision of a better future. Now let me come to the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is China. If you want to understand Prime Minister Modi's approach to China till now, pre-Ladakh I'm talking about, one should look at India-Vietnam approach to national development. It looks very strange, but I found that it's very relevant. Essentially, our two country priorities are economic growth, abolition of poverty, improvement in the quality of life or the ease of living of our citizens. We wish to live at peace with our neighbors and resolve disputes through negotiations, failing which by arbitration, and try to increase that understanding. We recognize that success should be built upon areas of agreement enlarged and areas of disagreement reduced. And no single dispute, unless it's very strategic, challenging to your existence, should hold up progress on the others. We do not wish to be part of any military alliance and definitely not like to be targeting any country in that sense. However, we are sensitive about sovereignty. We are not overawed by size, disparities of size, and we understand the need to work together. Fortunately, our $500 million line of credit to Vietnam for the purchase of petrol defense equipment, and also Japan's new similar grant to Vietnam show that we understand that in the changing circumstances, we must work together. Prime Minister Modi very early on and continued for a long time, whether it was Ahmedabad, whether it was Wuhan, whether Mahabalipuram, was trying to demonstrate and making a great courageous step that we need good working relations with China despite our disagreements, and we want greater economic links. They should not be seen as a weakness, rather a desire that war and hostility are obstacles to growth, and together we should grow. He refused to be part of any effort to encircle China, or even to let any desire be shown that I'm ganging up with somebody against you. If you look at the speech at 2018 Shanghai Dialogue, absolutely clear speech. We are interested in a rules-based order that allowed countries big and small to cooperate. We will not be part of any grouping to encircle anybody. We want Indo-Pacific to be open. But yes, if pushed, we will work in concert with others. And the revival of Quad must be seen in this context. So while Shinzo Abe may have revived the originator of Quad, didn't work up 2008, Xi Jinping is the founder of Quad too. And this re-emergence of the Quad, US, Australia, India, Japan, has raised many doubts in members of the Indo-Pacific community. They see the Quad as an American conspiracy meant to ensure that India and China become suspicious of each other, making normalcy difficult. I think this view is very naive. The clouds on India-China relationship go back a long way, far before Ladakh. They were exasperated over the years, but they were there. I will not go into details, but in question and answer, I'm happy to deal with it. So you cannot confuse the cause and the effect. That USA and China have developed better appreciation is something to be welcome in any case, China or no China. Their mutual suspicion, too long, unnatural. We had to get out of this. Now, there were historical reasons for it. I need to have to go into that. Pakistan, etc., economically, Cold War. I mean, I'm sure you know it, so I will not really go into it. But yes, I think what Prime Minister Modi has demonstrated, and which is why India's position is seen very differently from the past, that you get a sense of basic proportion of work in diplomacy, that the country acts in its self-interest. Having said that, of course, self-interest, you should not, if you don't take advantage when you're congruent of interest with others, then you're being foolish, I don't think that. And if somebody wants to create a Sinocentric world and be aggressive, then we have no option in that sense to react differently and to try and get out of it. Now, China's aggressiveness in our neighborhood, well known, not just Belt and Road, the CPEC passing through Indian territory, so occupied by Pakistan. Doklam I have mentioned again and again, and other stuff, is now definitely something which must be kept in mind, which cannot be wished away. And therefore, while we do not wish to be aggressive or pick fights, if fight comes to us, we must be sure. The last few minutes, last 4-5 minutes, let me just spend looking at some specifics, bilateral and regional. And I would touch on the key countries and the neighborhood definitely. Because our relationship with the neighborhood has unfortunately got enmeshed in much larger strategic maneuvering. The South Asian neighborhood is not India's own in that sense. There's no involvement of outside players. With USA, the last few years, our relationship has been stepped up despite the tensions of America first under Trump. And earlier, Obama's initial accommodation of China and Pakistan very strongly. Despite that, it's stepped up. Look at the Modi-Obama joint statement 2014. Extraordinary statement of India taking open stand on the need for unimpeded access across the South China Sea. The first public statement we mentioned South China Sea. Our defense and intelligence cooperation have gone up a lot, substantial purchases, but I think we should develop more joint development of systems. We have to do more. The US has been openly pitching for India's admission to the nuclear suppliers group. We have signed our foundation agreements. And with Pakistan, USA has a complicated relationship. They have stopped fund flow in the past. They grey-listed them under FATF. But yes, America needs Pakistan, and India must understand. To get out, America needs Pakistan to get out of Afghanistan. But having said that, the big unknown is the November elections. But as far as I'm concerned, whether it's Trump or Biden, the relationship with China is in a stage where it cannot suddenly improve. In fact, Biden, under pressure from the unions, will be economically more aggressive on China than Trump can be. With Japan, Abe's early faith in India and his persistence with India. In fact, Prime Minister Modi as Chief Minister visited Japan, and he had met the then ex-Prime Minister Abe, and Abe was out. That was a very good thing. The way Abe has been able to move on India, the civil nuclear cooperation agreement, had to overrule his entire establishment, which is very against it. Now, hopefully, we'll sign the joint logistics support agreement. Our defense and strategic partnership is very well developed with the 2+2 dialogue. And therefore, his departure is a big blow to India. But while the new PM may not be equally bullish on India, I don't see how the relationship will really go off tracks. What I have not been able to mention really well, but the relationship with Saudi Arabia and UAE and the way they treat India seriously as against the past, when they saw India through the Pakistani eyes, completely changed now. And it's actually a revolutionary change, I can say that. We have very substantial security and intelligence cooperation, very, very substantial, which can't be mentioned in public, the details of it. And the fact that they naturally look towards India as a stabilizing force, which is something which was not there in the past at all. And huge investments in the pipeline, huge investments in the pipeline. And even as we have done this, despite tensions in the Saudi-Iranian relationship, our relationship with Iran has been generally steady, the Chahwa railway line notwithstanding, because that's more complicated. People jump to conclusions but not understanding the facts of it. Our neighborhood, yes, Prime Minister Oli has launched a cartographic aggression on India, I call it. His idea is very clearly to spoil India-Nepal relations. That was what drove it. To change the level at which it was functioning. I'm not using the word spoil, but to change the way it functioned. But it also reflects the divisive nature of internal politics in Nepal. And that we tend to ignore it. And Nepal's collapsing economy at this moment. I think India's very, very studied, mature, silent approach to it, if it be provoked, has paid off. Within Nepal, people have started writing that we have gone too far. You can't treat India like this. You have to make up with India. Never in the past would this have happened in Nepal. In the meantime, despite all the tensions, we have become as a very large supplier of electricity to Nepal. They have doubled the availability. As much they produce, we supply to them. Our oil pipelines completed well within time, announced by Prime Minister Modi. It's already in operation, showing that India can deliver projects when there is a political will. And that's important if you want to raise the station in the world. Sri Lanka, change of government. A lot of people in India panic, oh, change of government, what will happen? A lot of negative comments. Oh, you have lost Sri Lanka. They did not seem to have noticed that we had kept a good relationship, developed with Mahinda Rajapaksa, who had visited India also, when not in power, met the Prime Minister. Jaishankar was the first dignitary to meet President Gotabaya, and this relationship has developed. And the new Foreign Secretary, Admiral Jayant Kolambage's very clear statement on television that on security matters, Sri Lanka will follow an India first policy and be extremely sensitive to India's security concerns. I cannot imagine any of India's neighbors, Maldives aside, who has ever said this in such clear, unambiguous terms. And if we can see how it is happening. With the new Maldives government, I don't have to say anything. On Bangladesh, relations are very, very robust. There are lots of anti-India writings in the media all the time, CAA, NPR, otherwise, but it's very manageable. It's again part of internal Bangladeshi dynamics and apprehensions, of course. The fact that so many millions have crossed the border is a reality that many of them don't wish to acknowledge. And therefore, in closing, what should I say? What has guided the foreign policy of the Prime Minister Modi, which is by India's project, is a relentless pursuit of national interest with a willingness to go beyond the doctrinaire approach of the past, which had held us down. Sometimes we need clear doctrines, but doctrines have a tendency to get outdated and therefore can bog you down. So therefore, we are part of Quad, but we're also part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. We have trilateral dialogues with Japan and United States, Japan, India, USA dialogue, but we also have with India, Russia, China dialogue. We have developed extremely close relationship with Saudi Arabia, and of course Israel is always there, without sacrificing relationship with Iran. Point is, we do not let any partner tell us who we should engage with, on what terms, or what our domestic policies should be. We have made that very clear. We will not accept anything, even a close partner, talk about domestic politics. So because of all these factors, India's rise is something which must be understood. Looking at the context, looking at the long duration. Now, there are no metrics to determine a rising power trajectory. Morgenthau's Supreme National Power, you can measure it. There's 8 points, but that's a static model. A dynamic model of a moving thing, very difficult to really assess it. Perceptions can vary. But I would suggest if you look over events over the past, there were the changes happening, which so many of them I mentioned. And then if you can find a trend in it, you will see that over the period of time, the pattern is very clear. India is rising, and this trajectory, a rising power trajectory, is generally seen and is accepted around the world. We just have to do things better. It's a difficult road, but I see good things ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for a very comprehensive lecture. And you provide us with a very balanced perspective in terms of the trajectory of India's rising power status. You really gave us a lot of takeaways in terms of understanding about where does India locate itself, how India got unfolded, how India basically has been evolving its foreign policy orientations. Despite all odds, how India has been rising. I think that is what is reflected in your lecture. It's a very optimistic and very positive lecture you have given to us. I'm sure there will be a few questions and we have sufficient time because we have kept, I think, this whole discussion until 4 p.m. And obviously, there will be a few questions coming from the students and the faculty. Those of them who would like to ask question can raise their hands. You can see that prompt in on your screen. Yes, Mayank.
I can see Rahul also.
Yeah.
And one more, yes.
Mayank, can you ask?
Mayank, please go ahead.
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Fantastic, sir. First things first, thank you so much for this opportunity, sir. It means a lot to us.
Thank you.
Sir, I had a question on India and China's economic relationship, and especially how it would normalize, let's say, in the coming few months and the coming few years. Sir, especially in the context of the fact that China is India's third largest export market, and it cumulatively invests close to $4 billion in a lot of Indian tech startups. So there's a deep interrelationship between Indian markets and Chinese markets. So, sir, I was wondering how you perceive or how you think the relationship will normalize in the coming time. Thank you so much, sir.
Can I take one more question, Rahul? Can you ask your questions? I can answer together.
Yes, Rahul.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the wide range talk. So from your talk, what I perceived was that India has many interests in different parts of the world, and it's obvious because India is rising in its economy and military power, and it has further ambitions than apart from its regional goals. So what I wanted to ask is that India still believes in the strategic partnerships, like you said, that it does not want to enter into alliances. But what I'm not able to figure out is that, for example, India just procured a loan of $500 million from the Asian Development Bank for a project in Delhi. So does this make us unreliable in front of other partner states, which can see India as a very interest-oriented country? And if not, then what makes India reliable despite its engagement with different states who are adversarial within each other as well? So that's what I wanted to ask, the rationale behind why India does not enter into alliance.
Interesting.
Thank you, sir.
Very interesting. Arvindji, any more questions?
Are there any questions?
एक हाथ तो मुझे और दिखा था, but नहीं, I may be wrong. Chalo, let me
I would
answer
like
these two.
Mr. Chali to make some points here. Are you there? Sadhri Chali, are you there? Okay, he's not there, it seems. So, sir, can you just answer these two and then again we can have...
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Arvindji, I'm here, but I thought...
End में,
Hello.
Shashadji end में बोलेंगे, है ना?
I was interested in knowing your answers to these two very good questions first.
Lovely. Thank you, Shashadji. Now, Mayank, yes, you are right. India and China have economic relations, but they're not as deep as you say they are. In the sense that if you look at the volumes, China's, of course, is a big supplier to India, a big importer. But our exports are fairly limited, and that's what I mean the answers. See, I don't believe in this bilateral trade deficit being a very serious thing by itself, unless they are driven by uneven rules. If your rules prevent me entering your market while you can enter mine, that is an issue, not the deficits per se. Now, right now, trade continues incidentally. Despite having the dark, trade is not stopped. Trade actually is continuing. Well, we have only said that on strategic matters, we are reluctant, and therefore we will not let you get into where you can actually tomorrow put us in trouble. But otherwise, it's fine. Now, China's investments in India and the startups are very large, no doubt. But when Deng Xiaoping was told why are you allowing foreigners to invest in roads in China and factories in China? He thinks that is their problem, not mine. He thinks when the foreign dollar comes to China and builds a road or a factory, the road and factory remains with us. It doesn't move away. So, so one should not get, as I said, I will not look to stopping any Chinese investments in India unless it is in strategic sectors, sectors where China can potentially put us in trouble or compromise our interest. Then we have to be clear. Germany and United Kingdom were the biggest trading partners in 1940. That did not stop them going to war. I'm not recommending a war with China. I'm merely pointing to extreme case. So we need a healthy relationship. What was Prime Minister Modi's whole point from 2014? That India and China would economically be together. Because we've realized that China has a lot to offer. We'll accept the reality of that. That's not pretended. But I should get access to the Chinese market, and Chinese technology should work in my interest and should not compromise my interest. And therefore, and if you look at the figure, China was, the bilateral trade relationship was #1 with India and China. It's now fallen. Our bilateral trade with the USA is now 140, far ahead of our trade relationship with China. So we can, in that sense, hopefully move ahead, but it takes two to tango. Now, Rahul, interesting point. I don't see whether 500 million from ADB comes into the picture. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, in an alliance, you shut yourself off. You get the benefit, no doubt. But we are not looking at our alliance partners fighting on our borders of Ladakh with our troops, right? And therefore, you have partnerships, and your partnerships are not alliances. The two are different. Now, obviously, when you are talking to two people opposed to each other, very strongly opposed to each other, one, they know you're talking to them, and your relationship is accordingly governed by the limits that you set. Tomorrow, conceivably, if two of them go to war, India is not in the business. India can try to make sure they don't go to war. We won't want to. But India is not in the business of fighting on either person's sides. Our aim is to generally bring down temperatures. So when we talk to the Saudis and Iranians, our aim is to bring down temperatures. When we talk to the Americans and the Iranians, same thing. And that is not a sign of weakness. That does not make you unreliable. That makes you a more reliable partner who, even when I'm down in the dumps, has not dumped me, but is prepared to talk to me. So that is your strength. I don't see that as your weakness. But yes, when it comes to the crunch and where existence is threatened, then countries like India would obviously have to make a choice. We hope we don't have to make the choice easily, but when push comes to crunch, your survival, your national interest is far more important than anything else. And that, I think, is something which most countries understand that language.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
India has never compromised on its strategic autonomy in the decision-making process. Those moments, which again India really takes India boast of, where India took a lot of hard, bold, strategic decisions, and that led India to elevate at this status. I think this is something which we have to learn from this lecture, and obviously the way things are unfolding, a lot of uncertainty which is existing geopolitically, and in that uncertain geopolitical situation, how India really is still showing its intentions, reflecting its larger role for itself, and also managing its neighborhood. That is what was reflected in this lecture. Sir, we have learned from your lecture.
I want to add one sentence. Before that, I want to add one sentence. This is a very good book, which has been referred in the beginning, in the introduction, edited by me, but Dr. Manish Surangam has also the very good chapter in it. If you want to understand tensions with China, do have a look at it. Small advertisement. Break time.
No, sir, we know about this book, and we are going to buy from our library and see that how we can read this. In fact, we have I think we read one review by India Foundation, if I'm right. India Foundation has reviewed this book last week.
We have it.
Yeah, so that journal they had sent that e-copy. I have read this. I think it was nicely reviewed by India Foundation. So, sir, thank you very much. We look forward to really learning from your experience, because perhaps we know very few who really have taken a lot of, we've been a part of a lot of these strategic policy decisions, which really has elevated India as a status in the global affairs. So, Dr. Muniz, can you formally propose vote of thanks?
जरूरत नहीं है vote of thanks, आपने दे ही दिया.
Muniz? Dr. Moniz?
His signal is weak.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And I stand with Professor Arvind Kumar in saying that we stand much more enlightened than we were at 2:30 p.m. today. Thank you, heartfelt thanks to you, sir, Sri Shakti Sinha ji, for giving your time and insights today to this audience. And it's such a wonderful, experience to learn from someone who has seen the, changing direction and the sweep of India's foreign policy, in the last many years, as we talk about a rising India. Thank you, sir, and heartfelt thanks to you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for
my thanks to Sri Seshadri Chari, another personality who has seen the changes and continuities in India's foreign policy very up close. Thank you for your insights, sir. My thanks to the head of department, Professor Arvind Kumar, who supervised this entire proceedings and under whose supervision the department, has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 10 years. A big thank you to my colleagues, Dr. Anand, who helped me in coordinating this webinar, and all my other colleagues. Thank you to all the students who have joined today and asked questions. And thank you to all the participants who have taken out time to participate today from outside the institution. Thank you so much and have a good evening to one and all. And Jai Hind. Thank you, sir.
Jai Hind. Thank you.
Jai Hind.